Welcome to MT Fridays. We're Melonya Johnson, owner of Be Smart Coaching, and Tahitia Timmons, owner of Conscious by Us. Together, we're here to fill your Fridays with unscripted conversations that cover the gambit: politics, current events, science, social justice, health and wellness, and more. We're here to elevate the conversation. We're fighting the brain drain, one unscripted conversation at a time. So grab your coffee, tune in, and let's dive into another episode of MT Fridays.
Well, hello, Tahisha.
Hello, Melania. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I guess we should have sort of an introduction. So, welcome to MT Fridays. I am Melania Johnson. I am the M in the equation, and you are.
The Tahisha, in the equation.
And
I'm just so excited to see you because usually we do a phone call. So, but
yes,
I think we talked about doing this because Melania and I say amazing things to each other in isolation, and we don't share them anywhere, really. Well, like maybe in like writings and things like that, but like we have some really amazing things I think we say.
I think so too. And just a little bit of a background, we call ourselves MT Fridays, filling the brain drain, one unscripted conversation at a time. And just in terms of our background, we are virtual friends. See, in the modern world, you can be virtual friends and good friends. I love her dearly. We met a couple of years ago when we worked for a company and we worked remotely. And we have been fast friends ever since. Tahisha is one of the most, I don't know, she is curious, she's funny, she's intelligent, she is a entrepreneur, a mom, a speaker, a coach. She's fabulous. And again, modern day friendships don't look like they did, back in the day. And I'm really happy for technology. Happy to be here with you today, for sure.
I'm happy to be here with you too. And I feel like now I feel like I'm going into the weekend like all up with all that praise. But like honestly, Melania, you have helped me so much in my practice because you you are a coach, you are an advisor, you're a teacher. I know this sounds like MT Fridays is all about us just like loving each other and giving each other praise, but honestly, it is some of the questions that you ask me and some of the questions I think that we ask each other and some of the thoughts that we have together and our different backgrounds. Like I say to you, oh, I find you to be the most organized person, the most on track person. And you'll say to me, no. But like, if you look at where your learnings and your research is, it really is in how people organize and process and do all of those things. So she's just like the expert in that. Like you always get me like back to like, well, where do you really want to be? Like, what are you after? And because this is unscripted, right? So I was thinking about this. So I switched primary physicians. Like I found a new primary physician. I had some ideas about like what type of doctor I wanted. And I realized after talking to you recently, I probably resonated and loved my new doctor because she was very similar to you.
Oh.
She asked me powerful questions and it was like, I hear what you're saying. I'm not going to let you cut, or not so much let you continue down this rabbit hole path, but she asked me inquisitive, curious questions about, my care. And that was not something that I was used to getting from a physician or she was actually an NP. But it wasn't something that I was used to experiencing, but I've gotten more comfortable with it since you and I started being virtual friends and like just that reflective, like, well, I hear what you're saying, but you know, how do you want to approach this? Like, so if you could change something, what would it be? And I was like, I'm getting a coaching session right now. Like, what's happening?
I'm always in
So
coaching
it's just
mode.
like awesome.
But here's the and we've had extensive conversations about everything, and that's why we're doing this, because we never know where the conversation is going to lead. But also to frame this is, Tahisha is in the medical field. She is a nurse, and a teacher, and teaches other nurses how to be nurses. So, it's really interesting when we start talking about, don't get me started on our healthcare system, because can we say universal healthcare? I don't understand why we don't have it. I just don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get a country that doesn't want the healthiest people, to live in their country. But it's really very interesting how savvy you have to be these days in order to get the care that you really need. And as a person that's inside of the healthcare community, you have had to push your own boundaries, in terms of really getting the care that you want. And I find that to be, disheartening, to be really honest.
You know, I've been thinking about that a lot more as so like Melonya is absolutely right. I'm a nurse. I have a master's in nursing education and technology, and I've taught nurses. And that doesn't mean that I am navigating this system any better than anybody else. Because I will say this, and sometimes healthcare practitioners will talk about this. When it comes to your own self care, it's really hard to step outside sometimes and take all that knowledge that you have and apply it in a good way. Like most of the time, the knowledge I have gets applied in a little bit of knowledge is a bad thing way. Meaning like my mind spirals and everybody does this. I don't think anybody doesn't do this to like, oh my gosh, what if I have this? Or maybe they should do this. Or like, oh, that sounds like this. But because I have that little bit of knowledge. But then I also think that because it's such a complex system and we pay for things, that little bit of knowledge sometimes makes me a bad consumer. And I say that because we are in a a healthcare system that is truly based on capitalism, which is an economic financial system. And because I have a little bit of knowledge and I know some of the things, and I pay for healthcare, I'm like, well, maybe I can we do it like this, or can we do this? Because I don't necessarily want to be taking a lot of meds that aren't going to lead to relief. And I don't want to be doing a lot of interventions that at the end of the day, I'm just paying out of pocket for and not getting any benefit from. And I wonder if I would be a little different with my healthcare if it wasn't so expensive in the US. Like, or if we weren't leaning towards, it's almost like lean towards here's the diagnosis, but we're not going to pay for the treatment for it. And we're not going to, look at how do we cure people versus just continue to treat them with, chronic conditions. Like, why don't we do more research into curing some of the diseases that are out there? Now that we have all this technology, like I love technology, why aren't we thinking about cures and biological cures? Like, I know that gets scary for people because they're like, oh my gosh, gene biology and rewriting genes, and we're messing and we're becoming godlike. But probably cures will only come when we lean into like the technology piece of it. But then if you think about capitalism and medicine, if we did cure a lot of things, a lot of people would be out of business, including myself, probably. Like, imagine a world where you go to the doctor and they're like, okay, well, let's see what's going on. And it's really a gene therapy treatment and they're done with that complaint. Um, as far as longevity of life, like that's imaginative, but I don't know why we're not more imaginative. Like, we're very like, hey, let's go give you a pill. Like,
Well,
instead of like, let's figure out something really radical.
Yeah, I think it was Chris Rock in a comedy show some years ago. He goes, the money isn't in the cure, right? It's in it's in the, prescriptions, right? It's in, you know, you know, the healthcare conglomerate, really, right? But while you were talking, I think something that came up in my mind was, we live in a world these days that there's so much mistrust, and that's true of the medical the community as well, or industry as well. Some time ago, and if for you folks, I am a YouTube junkie. But I came across this one content creator called the Soft Underbelly, where he does these interviews with all sorts of people. But he did this interview with a man who was a medical writer, and he told a beautiful story. I mean, it was just intriguing about how he got into the industry. But what was so amazing, after having been in the industry for years, he came to understand through reading about different medications, specifically in the oncology area, that there were medications that were passed by the FDA, right, that virtually had no benefit, right? and um and he was thinking specifically of a breast cancer um medication that really had no benefit, had horrible side effects. And it bugged him, and he asked the doctor, he might have been at a conference or whatever, to say, why are people prescribing, why are doctors prescribing this medication when it virtually does nothing? These women who are clinging to some kind of hope, right, based on this medication, is making them terribly sick, and it doesn't do anything. And the doctor responded to him. He goes like, well, my beach house isn't going to pay for itself. I can't send my kids to Stanford or whatever school, Ivy League school it was. And knowing that there are some folks out there that operate that way, knowing that there are insurance companies that know that what they're going to deny you for is actually what you need, but you have to jump through so many hoops. I think I shared a story with you with just having passing conversation with a worker in a candy shop, who said that she had to jump through hoops to get a knee replacement. Her knee, bone on bone kind of, situation. And her health insurance said, well, no, how about 3 months of steroid shots? And then after that, it was like, well, let's do some more. And the doctor was like, no, let's not. Right.
Yeah. And so in the US too, and most health systems, like you have to have a doctor kind of weighing in, like, oh, I think this is the time when you're allowed, even though they're not in your body, to have this treatment. You have health insurance weighing in when you're going to get your treatment. And all the while, the patient is just not feeling well. But like you mentioned, trust. And I think the trust thing is a dual issue too, because you have physicians and nursing and healthcare who are educated on this, moving away from a patriarchal system. But that was very much based on like a patriarchal system where I know better than you because I have some education. So I believe that I can chart the course of how you want to live in your body. So it kind of creates this like unbalance, right? Like the patient who's living and experiencing this only in the past probably decade or two, maybe not even 2 decades, have we been saying that the patient is the expert of their body, right? But if you think about medicine and healthcare, it's been around for over 100 years. And so we have this last small section, 10% of the time, not even 10% of the time it's been in existence, where we're actually saying, well, why don't you talk to the patient and ask them how they feel? Why don't you get their perspective? Why don't you take the time to figure out how they're living in that body and let them help you chart that course? Or even I'll go even further and say, and just let them chart that course. Like let them decide with some, and I think what it is really figuring out, well, what does the information out there say? Because we're not all trained to read that information, and then just maybe like translating that, and then, well, what do you want to do? And that was probably the thing I liked about the new primary NP I was seeing, is that she was just like, I'm going to translate this for you, and, well, what do you want to do? And even though I'm a nurse and I know these things, being a patient is different, because my nurse brain was turned off. All I can think about is my patient brain, which is like, I'm having pain, I can't think past that. I like, when you have something you're going through, you're not like analyzing it like, oh, the pain, this is what it is. You're in it. So you can't see anything past it. Maybe your knowledge doesn't really come into play. And the things you read, like, you begin to feel like such an expert on your singular disease that maybe some other diseases out there that you're not familiar with, you don't even know. So I do feel like, our system doesn't really collaborate, but it's starting to. But I think as we tell patients, like, be your own advocate and get out there and fight for what you want, we still haven't educated all of healthcare to say, well, respect patients when they come in and say, this is what I want. Because the minute you meet a barrier as a patient, the trust goes back up. And doctors are trained under the system of, well, they're not great historians like patients, right? So I've seen in charts, like, patient not a great historian of their own care, right? And I used to think, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Like, why would I be a great historian? Like, that just made sense to me as a healthcare provider. Now that I'm a patient, and I think I said something to you like, oh, I was a poor historian, like, of my own timeline. But as I was in it, I was like, it is hard for me to remember like every doctor I've seen at this point, and who did care and what tests I've had. Like, when you get a complicated disease, it's hard to be a historian of your care without coming in with a folder, right? That says, like, here's all the places I've been, here's everything I've done. And I'm going to tell you from the back, like the back end of that, a lot of times working with other people on the team, or like, you would have this bias, like, oh, here they come with their bundle of stuff, they're going to be the expert. Like, there's such negativity in the healthcare field when it comes to the prepared patient who knows themselves, the patient who doesn't know anything about themselves, like, right, the ones we call poor historians, the ones just in the middle. Like, why can't we just like exist and try to navigate? But like, the whole trust thing is out there, because I know I've had those same biases at nursing stations, where someone will say something which, when you think about it externally, oh, they think they know everything. They think they're the expert. Yeah, they probably are. It's their body. Or like, they don't know anything. How can they not be informed about their own disease process? Okay, that's what they're choosing.
I think a couple of things come up for me. One is one of the words that you use when you were talking about your doctors. You said partner. I want to partner with you. And that's really what we're looking for when we go into, our doctor's offices, right? We're in our healthcare providers. We're looking for a partner, right? Not somebody to, yes, please come with your expertise so I can understand, but partner with me in terms of helping me to have better health. That's one thing that comes to mind. The word advocacy. I'm 60 years old, soon to be 61 next week, right? Is there going to come a time when I can't advocate for myself? What I want is a medical system that advocates for me, right? Not everybody can advocate for themselves. Not everybody knows how to advocate for themselves. I want my doctor, I want my nurse, I want my nurse practitioners, I want my healthcare providers to always be advocating for me, right? That should be built into the system. And because you may not always be able, there may come a time when I'm not responsive, right? And I can't advocate for myself. So does my health care decline because I can't? It shouldn't. The other thing that comes to my mind, and maybe when I talk about universal health care, one of the biggest voices that I just don't hear are from the doctors and the healthcare professionals. What, when it came time for and I don't call it Obamacare, right? When I called when it came for the Affordable Care Act to be passed, I kept looking around saying, where are the doctors out there? Where are why aren't they advocating? Where are their marches? Because I don't know. Today you get about 15 minutes, a 15-minute window of seeing, a meeting with your doctor, right? It's not really, it feels like they're there to give you a prescription as opposed to really partnering you with, health, right? And so wouldn't they want a system that's different?
Yeah. So, I actually was, um, I was thinking about this the other day because oddly enough, I started really thinking like, why don't we have worldwide some type of universal healthcare, or even in the US, some type of universal healthcare or accessible for all? And if you think about our system that we have in place, the doctors most likely did not weigh in or were afraid to weigh in because, in order for us to really change the system in the US with health, we have to change the capitalize, like it leaning into a system of capitalism. And so I had open heart surgery years ago, and my surgeon for that surgery, his billing invoice for that was $800,000 for the thoracic surgeon. So overall, and I'm not going to say that this wasn't a complicated surgery, that it wasn't long. I think it was like 10 or 12 hours. It was over $1 million. But that's interesting, right? Like over $1 million for a procedure for one person. Now, I'm not saying I don't deserve someone to spend $1 million on me. Melonya and I would both love if someone would spend $1 million on us, not on thoracic surgery, on just gifts and stars. Um,
Yes.
but anywho, like physicians make a lot of money. And in order to create a cost effective universal system, they would have to scale back on their fees. Nurses don't make the same as physicians, but even you'll hear there was something a few years ago when nursing said, like, we don't get paid enough in the context of finances and inflation and everything that's going on in the world and what we do. People were like, you're making way too much. Like, because you think about it, and yeah, anything over $40,000, $50,000, $100,000 in the United States for a lot of people is a lot of money. But in certain areas, $100,000 is not a lot of money, right? So, and in the U.S., so if I take that $100,000 salary in LA, like what does that get me? Probably not a lot. New York City, same thing. I'm making 100,000 in the Midwest. I'm getting a little bit more, right? So our money doesn't even exchange the same geographically, area to area. So how do we create a system where you can talk about healthcare when capitalism is the driver for it? Like, I know I'm going to make more money on the Northeast and the West Coast than in the middle of the United States, which is actually where they have a provider crisis. Hello. To me, it's not rocket science to say this system doesn't serve patients as far as provider spread. And then the other piece is, I'm not going to say anything as a healthcare provider, because if I weigh in and I say, look, in the UK, physicians don't make the same. They're not. It's considered a little differently. Here in the US, we're like, oh, we want to pay you millions of dollars because we want to jump right in that spot, and we want to be individualistic with our care, and we want to have like the choice. But perhaps if you want to spread it around to everybody, you have to start talking about, well, what does it look like to really ensure everyone? What does it cost for each person? And where do we have to scale back when it comes to like finances and salaries? And would I be open to that? Would you be open to taking a 20 to 30% salary reduction to work in a world that has universal health care? Are you willing to get rid of health insurance companies, which are part of the issue? right? We have private insurance here, which tends to negotiate a different price for things than you will ever get as an individual. So universal healthcare in the US would probably mean getting rid of all the private health insurance companies. It would look like capping physicians' salaries differently, so they're not going to weigh in on ACA. It would look like changing it from a for-profit medical system to let's look at, how can we actually help people. And you'd have to also fix pharmaceutical companies because they cost a lot of money. So if I can't make a profit off the drugs that I'm giving you chronically, if I can't make a profit off of interventions that you don't need, because now everything is billing the same, then medicine isn't capital. Like it's not a capitalistic system. And
Imagine.
completely different, right? Because think about what's driving the cost up and why we can't afford to do universal health care. That is the reason.
Well,
Because
we can't afford to do universal health care. I mean, I just saw somewhere where the United States sent $1 billion somewhere for some war, or not a billion, I don't know, right? We can't afford it. But here's the thing. I always go back to this. What are our values, right? Do you go into medicine, and maybe people do you go into medicine because of the money, or do you go in because you have a vocation, because you are a healer and that you want to bring healing to people, right? I'm still disappointed that, because here's the thing, and some people might push back and call me all sorts of things that I'm not, but I don't think I'm still trying to figure out what the end game to capitalism is, because I don't see it as a win-win kind of equation. I just don't. To pivot just a little bit, I just read just recently that Aldi's, which is do you have Aldi's where you are?
we do.
They they just raised the salary range, or their salary wage to $23 an hour, right? And I go to all these. I shop all around, but I so appreciate the fact that, because I think when we started living through the beginnings of the pandemic, it was very obvious what were essential workers, right? And as we, filed through, and 6 feet distance, waiting in the line for the attendant or cashier to cash us out, they had to show up, right? They had to show up, and people were frightened. They were scared, right? But they showed up. And so, when you go into all these, it's no frills. It's not, it's not the most glamorous. It's not a Wegmans, if for those people who have Wegmans. But I really thought that it was I thought it was a great move to try to help people have a living wage. But then what ticked off in my mind, what also happened in my mind, is that for some areas, because I do work part-time for an organization that's a nonprofit organization, right? They're having a hell of a time trying to get people, and it'll get even harder because you can go at Aldi's and get $23 an hour, and these nonprofit organizations can't maybe afford that, or would like to pay that. In this case, the state funds this organization, and apparently for critical services like helping people with autism, helping taking care of our elderly, things of that nature, doesn't equate to paying people well, right, for these essential services. And it really kind of confounds me, again, because I go back in terms of when we were talking about the doctors. What are our values, right, as a
Yeah.
society? What are our values? Do we value we value work, right? Because the Americans work more than anybody else in the world, right? We take less
We
vacations,
do.
right?
We do. We are some of the most hardworking citizens, even if it is hardworking in the sense of like a hamster on a wheel that is endless. We don't know where we're going. Someone told us to get on it. Maybe there's a salt lick above that is teasing us to keep spinning the wheel. But like, it's interesting too in a system based on capitalism, in an economic system that exists like that, what the hierarchy of positional prestige says. Like, when you said it's an Aldi, it's not like it doesn't have as much prestige, but why doesn't it have as much prestige? Like, we also have the ability now through technology and our understanding as human beings with how the world works, where everyone could, if we chose to create a society like this, engage in work. And work, like, here's the truth: we work because it entertains us. It does entertain us. It socializes us. It gets us out. It gets us engaging with each other. We then give back to the community. We share in that. And so why do we value the doctor over the person who runs the register? Because I need both, and they are both important. And we learned that in the pandemic. We also learned, or at least I learned in the pandemic, that certain people did not believe that certain jobs were jobs for everyone. I heard like, hey, we don't have to pay these people that much, or we don't have to value their services because it's transitional jobs. It's like no one says, you know what I would like to be when I grow up? A cashier. Why not? Like, people used to say that. Now there is not that same value to retail or front facing work. Which is why are we all of a sudden like that's not as valuable as the doctor, when we truly learn that we both need those positions. And why then, if it's valuable, don't we say to them, okay, insurance, that's going to be given to you. That's a given, because I'm sure the doctor has insurance, right? We also don't say like, hey, you know what? Being a register, running a cash register is difficult and you need breaks too. Do they get holiday time? Like, what's your vacation time like? We are one of the few countries that does not take vacation. Like you said, we work hard. We work hard all the time. But in other countries, it's not out of the norm to have 3 to 4 weeks. Just everyone has 3 to 4 weeks off. And no one is coming at you like, oh, wait, you're going to take your vacation? Well, that's not allowed. There was some place, I think you were telling me about it, where if you didn't take vacation, you got like an extra day the next year, which is like, if you didn't take it, then obviously you're not going to take that extra day. So, like, who cares? What do we value? And like, our three biggest expenses in life, uh, education, healthcare, and housing, we pay for privately. Like, we have all been tricked. We have been tricked into paying for the three things we need the most. And the reason why I threw education is in there is we know that like for a lot of stuff, a lot of shit, you can't do it without some type of education. I'm not just talking higher ed, just like training programs. So in order to be able to have the housing, I need to have a little bit of training, skills, education. I got to pay for that. In order to maybe get a job, I need to have a house, but I can't get a house. I don't have a job. So this doesn't make any sense. And then sliding in the background is health, which is like, ooh, I'm health. And oh, wait, you're not healthy? Like, you're not mentally well, you're not physically well. Well, you're not going to get a job because now you can't do some of the things that the job is requiring. But I need a job to pay for the health care so that I can get the health care and get the job and get the housing. So we have this whole group of people we're just like, you're not allowed to participate. And for every person who's going to say disability, unemployment, all of the support systems that the United States has, like church, charities, all those things, you still have to go through the effort of doing it. Like you either have to get a lawyer for disability sometimes to get benefits, or you're denied, or the system's just set to deny, 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 make it so confusing that these people who are challenged by the three, what we're secretly hoping is they die. Let's be honest. Like, that is our form of approved systemic aborting of those we don't agree with. And it is done by both political parties through hoops and leaps and, challenges. We cut out entire groups of people. And I
Wait a
went off
minute.
on a
Hold it now.
tangent.
Wait.
I went off on a tangent. I took that
So
far.
I'm gonna push back on
Bring
something.
me
A
back
couple of
in.
things. One is that you said, work is entertainment. It's not. It's not entertainment. It is a means to an end. For some
Oh, come
people,
on. It is kind of entertaining.
no,
You
it's
and I
no.
met at work, and that was entertaining. There's a
No.
small piece
Mm-mm.
of entertainment
No.
to work.
Yeah, I'm gonna speak to the folks in the back. Is work entertaining? No, work is it is the means to an end. I mean, it really is. Here's the thing. I happen to love my work, right? I don't have children. I'm not in a relationship. Work has always been at the center of my world because and I haven't always loved my work, right? And so trying to get to the work that I love has always taken front and center in my life. And now I'm doing the work that I love, right? And so I find, you go back to the Puritan work ethic, right? That, your purpose was through work. Excuse me. And so I do enjoy my work, but for many years and for many people, work is a means to an end. I think generations that are in the workforce now, and there are multiple generations in the workforce now, they're not ascribing to my life is work, right? It is something that pays my mortgage if you're lucky enough to get one. It pays your rent, and so your portion of the rent, because now people can't afford to even have an apartment, right, without having multiple roommates, right? It pays for your food, it pays your bills, it pays for the student loan. Don't get me started on why education isn't free all the way up to the university, right? Why would you want a sick and uneducated citizenry? Am I
It's
making up stuff?
distraction, right?
Citizen based, right? Why would you why
Because
would
they're
you want that?
distracting us. It's
Yeah, and
distraction.
and
I
and
can't
so
focus on
that's
the bigger thing.
yeah, and so that's why we're here. Like, let's wipe away the fog, and let's talk about really, we spend a whole lot of our time, even and when you look at the kind of movies that come out, we're really enamored with the dystopian world, right? And in many ways, we're living, a part of it. The rate of homelessness, the rate of people feeling nothing, right? Vivek Murphy said loneliness and is at an epidemic rate, right? And we've got all of these things. It is feeling in some ways dystopian, but there's hope, and we never talk about what the alternative could be, and where we have a fully functioning society that has values, that values life, that values well-being, that values a clean environment, right? That values the respect for all work. Right. One of the things that
Yeah.
I saw during you hear a lot during election periods where people start talking about who they're going to represent. Right? Are you representing the billionaire class, or are you representing the middle class? Are you representing the lower class? When you stop to think about these classes, right? You say, why is one job, more esteemed than the other? And so you get put in a class, right? And the part of the hamster wheel is that you're always trying to navigate your way out of whatever class you're in, unless you're in the billionaire class.
because we have, even if we haven't been told outright, we have been unconsciously told a way to live our lives through like being inundated with images that we are told are better than other images. Like, do you remember? So, like, I remember years ago there was some discussion in the 80s about subliminal marketing messaging, meaning, yeah. So, like, it was when like a popular TV person would drink a certain drink or like, and it was branding. And so, like, we've had that ever since advertising and marketing existed, like, ever since we figured out that if somebody resonated around something, they would do exactly what that mentor model did. And so, like, it's so interesting that we don't talk about what, as a society, we have kind of pushed as this is the best way to live. And like, we have pushed this silent message that the best way to live is work hard, get a lot of money, look out for yourself. You don't necessarily need community because, and even like Instagram and YouTube and TikTok, all of those things, they're about how do I define myself in this wild niche that people are going to be like, ooh, that's fun. Like, how do I exemplify the like individualism, and like I can be successful, I can be fun, I can be all these things, but how do I get you to buy into this brand if this is how you should live your life? And for most people, there is an acceptable brand we've been pushed because we haven't been pushed this idea that you don't have to work in the way that you work. You can do something different. Um, when people weigh in on opinions about things, it tends to be an opinion that is, well, I see what you're saying, but, and you get me on this all the time because I say but a lot, right? Like, but, like that negates everything you said before. And I've learned that it's so hard to do. Um, like, you'll see opinion comments on videos and things that will say stuff like, yeah, like everybody wants to do these things, but who's paying for it, right? Like it's the challenge of it's going to fail before we even start talking about ideas, because we are so inundated with like, this is how you should live your life. You should, you know, uh, have a partner, like you should have a lover. For women, it's you should have children. And like, you might not have been told this, but when you look on television, you see more heterosexual couples than people that don't have children, people that have different families, like people that are like the influx of diversity in entertainment was to see maybe a grandmother raising children or aunts and uncles having to participate in that system. The different types of families that actually exist got people saying like, oh, well, maybe my lifestyle is not unacceptable. But if you saw
No, what
like,
that does is really bring out the people who then want to knuckle down and say that, what we're saying today is this push for this traditional, family unit and these traditional ways. Elon Musk weighed in on Taylor Swift saying, I'll give you a baby and I'll love your cats, or something really condescending and misogynistic, right? I go back in terms of, our society and how we think and how we feel and what we think we want and who we should be. I encourage people to go on YouTube and to watch a documentary by the BBC called "The Century of the Self." And I say this to everyone: it is a
it's a good one.
it is a history. Did you watch it?
I did.
Yeah, it gives a history on how we have become consumers. And just a little tidbit of it, the father of public relations, or PR, who coined that phrase, is the nephew of Sigmund Freud. And he watched his uncle and his work in the subconscious, and he went, I can use this, right? And he was hired by the United States government, I think in World War I, to write propaganda right? He was so good
I
at it.
mean, that's really what it is. It's
It,
propaganda.
it
Like
is
it
propaganda.
speaks to like even the debate, which I'm not going to get into, but even the debate, if you listened, had a lot of what we call SEO viral catchphrases that both candidates use. Like we know that certain things, like if resonate more with human beings than other things, fight or flight, right? If I get you to be afraid of something, that could be a driver for your behaviors too. If I get you to embrace as like, well, this person is what represents like motherly aspects, right? So like if you were to, and they've done studies with pictures and images, like who looks more like a mother, who looks like they would be caring. Like we think of certain images when we think about who could be a mother, right? So if I were to show you an image of someone who looks like they're like, you know, they've got pock marks on their skin from like disease, like they look like they're tired, their hair is like patchy, they're dirty looking, and then I were to show you like the Brady Bunch mom, and I were to say which one of these two people are moms, you would probably go with someone who looked like the Brady Bunch mom, even if they were motherless, right? And the other person actually has kids, right? So we have this picture in our head from television, print marketing, our relatives, unspoken behaviors, what we're told in school. Like every single unspoken thing tells you where you are supposed to be. When you look at who is the principal in a school, like who are the leaders? Are most leaders in society men? Like, so then that sends a bias like message to young and to anyone who says, no, that doesn't send a bias message. That's not true because we know when we look at certain things, we assume that that job, that profession, that role is that person, that gender, that look, that race. So police for a long time were completely male, right? Because we looked around and we were like, okay, that's what that looks like. So we have entire generations. You have this view of like, this is what police looks like. This is what teachers look like. And you mentioned something that's so important. We have multiple generations in the workforce that are having to simultaneously change and accept what people's roles are, that people are not bound by this subconscious message that for many of us, we've been told. And we're also living longer. So those beliefs that we had from like 1910 are still in the general population and they're still, being spouted because we never go back and we say, well, I understand that that was the way it was then. But I'm going to hold you accountable to the changing society. I've even said it myself with like older relatives. They're older. Like, I'm not going to try to force them to change. Why? Like, why? If we really want to be adaptive and have the flexibility and plasticity of our brains, kids are plastic and they're acceptable for things because they're not set. Like, there's no reason why you have to be set in your thoughts, your process, your behavior. Someone told you you can't accept things because you're older and you've always done it that way. It's harder and it takes us longer. And like, you have to remember if you've been doing something for 40 years, you're not going to change overnight. Like my back tells me that every day. My rehab doc is, my back is partially fused. I said to him, it just hurts, it hurts, it hurts, it hurts the muscles. And he said, well, you spent 40 years like compensating for a curved back. We straightened you out and your back, your muscles in there are like, no, we've been doing it this way for 40 years. We are not changing. We're not changing overnight. And that is the same with society. But it doesn't mean that I can't say to those muscles in my back, I want to train you to act differently. Yeah, it's going to take a lot of effort and it's going to take a lot of work. And maybe they won't change. Same thing with people. But we have to try. And like the fact that we lean towards dystopia is, because we are experiencing that right now. Very few of us are living what we would consider utopian lives. And so, and we see dystopian shows and we hear dystopia on social media. So it's easier to embrace that. And there's also this idea of the cost sunk, right? Like we've invested so much into capitalism and it would take so much to change it. Like, why bother? Let's just keep going. It's like a train that you just keep pushing along the tracks, even though the wheels are falling off because you're like, I don't even want to stop the train to figure out a better way.
I think
And
it's
it feels
more
like
than
that's
that.
why society feels like they're rushing to
I
dystopia.
think it's more than that. I think that there are very powerful people who make certain that that train stays on the capitalist track, right? But I want to go back to the century of the South. I think that
Of course, because
it's an
nobody,
important,
you said this to me though, no one gives up power willingly.
no.
And I would not want to give up driving the train willingly.
Well, we do.
Um,
We have. We have.
we have, but
We
it's hard.
we see it in our
It's hard.
political system. We see it, we've given up the right to drive the car in our own destinies. And again, again, power is not given, is taken, right? And so I'm all about taking our own power back. And again, I'm just going to just talk about the century of the self for a minute. We don't really understand, you know, where some of our values come from, right? When you if you consume social media, if you consume TV, we're oftentimes enamored by these material things, right? What designer label, purse you're carrying, or what you're driving, or whatever. Again, I encourage you to see that documentary by the BBC, The Century of the Self, because it's all been curated for you. There's an engine that is working to make you feel inadequate in your life, right? And in order to feel fulfilled, you have to have this title. You have to live in this zip code. You have to wear this. Your children have to be like that. It is being dictated so subtly in everything that we come in contact with. I personally am having personal strikes against the onslaught of advertisement. I mean,
Yeah.
it is
Oh my
just
God. There's not a
insidious.
moment that we're not advertised to buy something.
But and
I
just to finish the thought, when you were talking about people working with their doctors and being able to, tell their doctors what they want. The only thing that our society is kind of set up for us to tell a doctor what we want is what new medication we want, because we're constantly being inundated with. I've in the last few, maybe a month, I've heard of diseases like, well, what is that? Or do people have that? Well, what is this? In this onslaught of tell your doctor. So now, right, you're talking about those folders that we walk into the doctor's office with, right? We've got all of these prescriptions that we want to be prescribed to us. And so I'm just really, for any viewer or anybody who sees this eventually, I'm just hoping that, part of your philosophy, part of what we're teaching our children and our grandchildren, and part of what the younger generations are teaching us, is to break away from that materialistic, capitalistic world. I am enamored with the tiny house movement, alternative housing movement. I am enamored with slow living. I am enamored with people rejecting, this toxic environment that we call, our values in our world today. It's toxic. It doesn't create health. It doesn't create well-being.
it's not, and I think what we're all kind of yelling about or complaining about is the fact that it's not sustainable. And that's what we're really not saying out loud. We're not saying that if this system keeps going, can we sustain it the way that it is? And we don't also have things in place that make it sustainable. We haven't increased wages so that they compete and stay competitive with the actual cost of living. If you have a job and you are working full time or even part time, you should be able to take care of what you need and also be able to enjoy life, because it's not quantity. It's not just showing up and that you were there, but it is the quality of life that makes us want to be here. Like, if my life is awful every day, but yeah, I'm doing the things that society says I need to do or just to be here, of course I'm going to feel disgruntled and angry. And, I like, my only power is to get on the internet and then just be a troll of anger. Well, you may have that, but I had to fight for that. Those are the comments I make because I'm not happy. I might have quantity of my life, but I don't have any quality of that life. I feel disconnected from a society because, yeah, I'm doing everything you told me I basically had to do, but I still can't get the things that you have are dangling in front of me. Like, this is what you're supposed to have, right? So I did hear you like say that, and it is so disappointing that we have leaned so much into the material side of it. We have so much technology that could be used for great purpose if we weren't thinking about how much money can I make out of this innovation? How much how much can I get to be like, if I find a product that people love, then I can be in utopia, but it's a singular utopia only for me because I can now buy into it. And the truth is, if you do have a lot of money, even those that are, quote, like, I don't want to say killing it. I did. Oh, well. Even those who are really gaming the system and achieving the highest in capitalism, they are trapped into that spot. Like, they're stuck. Like, it doesn't serve anyone, even the people at the top, because they're constantly having to keep up with that. And they're siloed away from those who are not at the top. Like, they don't have those experiences, yet they make a lot of the decisions. And vice versa, like those who are, in the lower pieces of the hierarchy, we don't trust those who are at the top. We don't trust them because they don't have our experience. And they think that we don't understand them or hate them because they've done something that has gotten them into. That's not really what it is. We're all just out here trying to figure out how to live our lives and how to live quality of life more than, I just want to be existing. Yeah. Yeah.
I think that, and in my conversation, I use this phrase a lot: the virus of greed and the virus of power. When you stop to think about what a virus does in our bodies, it typically destroys healthy things, right? And greed is one of them. And the idea, and if you look at the stock market, right? The goal and the year-end earnings of a company, right? There's always this expectation that there's going to be a substantial gain, right? It's not okay. Now, mind you, it's okay if the employees rate of pay stays the same, but it's never okay for companies' revenues to stay the same. There's always a goal that it's got to be bigger, but that does not translate into my pockets or your pockets, which is very interesting. And so I really I'm all about the evolution. I'm all about the revolution, okay? And I'm all about people really taking back their powers to live the kind of life they really want to live.
And you pointed out something, it's about the companies, right? The companies, and at the end of the year, they look at, was the company profitable? But it's an interesting way to look at success in the US and in the world, because a company is not a person.
Yes, it is. In the United States, it is.
Well, if like let's be logical. A company is not a person, though we have given it an identity as a company. A company still doesn't have feelings. A company is not going to die bleeding in front of you. A company doesn't get sick. We say they do if their profits go down, but realistically, a company is a conglomerate of like goals. And so I don't understand, and I think that's what you're questioning too. Why do we give them so much? Like I was told not to humanize my dog, right? So because a dog is not a human being, they don't have feelings. Why are we doing the same thing with companies that aren't even alive, right? Like my dog has feelings. It's alive. Google is not alive. I'm not calling out Google for any particular reason, but we tend to like almost humanize and anamorph. What's the word I'm looking for? Like we think of them as having these needs. Companies don't have needs.
That's
Their
not we.
employees have needs, and they're not being met.
That's not
Like,
we.
what'd you say?
That's not we. We don't think
Oh, I'm talking about from a government
yeah, I'm
perspective,
saying yeah,
right? Like they're allowed those
the
tax breaks.
every
A company should not function in the same way. Like we should not think of them as like, oh, this is the wellness of the company. How well are your employees? Like the government should be and this is where like I disagree with one of the political groups. I actually am more for a more standard oversight for companies because I know that I have oversight as an individual, right? I can't just run around racing my car down the street, not renewing my nursing license if I want to be a nurse. So why are like engaging in unhealthy to society behaviors? Like if you look at our laws for individuals, a lot of them have to do with the safety of society. When we look at companies, the laws that companies fight for are about the profitability of companies. In the US, companies, for the most part, are our biggest resource for paying a portion of our health insurance. If that is the case, and we say that, like, if we truly kicked over companies to paying other companies B2B health, then we should task them entirely for that. That the healthiness of a company is how healthy and satisfied their employees are. What if the tax break was based on Glassdoor 5-star ratings, right? You don't get no tax breaks. You don't get no cuts unless you're really taking care of the people that you employ.
you're an
Because we've
anarchist.
literally turned everything over to them. We've said, you know what? We don't want to standardize retirement. We don't want to standardize healthcare. We don't even standardize education. And I want people should be thinking about this piece. Your company, when you're employed, which is our huge driver for the entertaining work. I know I called it entertaining. It's not really entertaining. It's a need. We have to work in the US and everywhere else. But if we have turned over all those pieces to companies, health, education, because I worked someplace where they put in a portion towards our health insurance. They also would give us certain monies for education if it was related to work. And they also, they were our employer, so they were giving the salary piece for the housing piece. Like if we have turned that completely over to them and we have said, well, the government's only going to come in if you really, and then we're going to make you jump through hoops and we're not going to pay you anyways because you're going to die before you go through the processes. But that's another story. If we really have turned that over to them, then we need to hold them accountable and put in some markers for, are you doing a good job at that? Like, and I know most people, when they think about, well, where do you get your health insurance? From my job. What we complain about is how expensive that is. We don't complain about the fact that why are companies not looked at how well they care for employees? Like why is it, well, you cut your losses and you're like you're making more money. satisfied people don't leave organizations. They really don't.
Well, that's again, we want to go back to values. The value is on your revenue generation. The value is not on the well-being of the people that help you to earn those revenues, right? But one of the words that I often use in our conversations, and I'll use it here, is that we are a plutocracy. Though we think we're fighting for a democracy, right? What we're really fighting for, what really is the system in place, is a plutocracy, and that is a government run by the wealthy for the wealthy, right? And so we're not really even a part of the equation, only in that we are a part of the resources used to build the revenue in order to make a certain group of people very, very wealthy, right? Elon Musk, just speaking of him, I'm not going to down him for some of the innovative things that he does in his company. I feel as a personally about him, differently. So I'm not not necessarily against people making money. Okay, that's not what I'm talking about. But what I'm also talking about is creating a society where, if you work, I was thinking about this the other day, and then we'll kind of wrap up. But hard work does not denote wealth. You can work hard all your life. You could work 2 jobs, right? All your life, right? And still 3, 4, right? And still not be wealthy, right? And so, we need to separate those two concepts, right? So I'm not against someone making money, but what I am against is the plutocracy. I am against the people that are supposed to be a part of a democracy really not getting what it is that makes their quality of life a good life. And that's a part of why we're here, why we're talking today. And we're coming to our hour, but I
Yes.
do want to share one thing, and part of the reason why we have created this platform is to have conversations that flow, right? We didn't come here with the
We
topic
went all
today.
over.
We're just, we're just vibing, we're just talking. But I do want to share. I was perusing the New York Times this morning, and I came across this influencer who and you talked about technology and where we are and what we have at our fingertips. He had 4 million followers, right? And his claim to fame was being on screen eating hordes and 10,000 calories worth of food, right?
Oh, I think I've heard of that
Right.
person.
It's called mukbank, right?
Yes.
Mukbank.
He's sick now, isn't he?
No, he's this particular
He's
person kind of
okay.
conned folks, and while using old footage of himself, he actually lost 250 pounds. 250 pounds. That's either one big linebacker or 2 people, right? But he lost 250 pounds and then went right back to he's photographed with this big old plate of pasta that he's stuffing in his mouth. And I thought to myself, damn, if you've got 4 million followers, can't you think of something more innovative to do than to use your platform? So that's
Yeah,
why
but
we're here.
I think for the most part, people don't want the pain that comes with innovation too, because one of the things I think that as human beings we tend to be very critical, and like when I enter a space and I know what I'm doing in that space, doing a silly dance or something like that, I know the type of feedback. I can think of the negative feedback, I can think of the positive. When we talk about innovative things, like ideas that are fresh and new, that idea itself may have response that you've never had to have criticism for. Like you may have to explore ways that like you've never thought of thinking. And so innovation is like innovative itself. Like, and I just love that you pointed that out. It's our like inability to even think outside the box.
Or
Wow.
just waste, okay? Let's just call it
Waste.
waste. I mean, just a waste of damn time, right? You're sitting there watching somebody gorge themselves while literally, then now this is a little heavy, but people are actually starving in other parts of the world. It's ludicrous. It's terrible. We've got these great technology. You just use it for something
And
that's
this is how,
worthwhile.
like, yeah, and
And
this
so
is
I
how
hope
we
that
share it.
today's conversation was a little bit worthwhile. We're going to end it. Come back and visit us again. I'm the M and MT. I'm Melonya. And you are.
Melonya, I love you so much. And I'm the T, Tahisha in MC. And like,
Oh,
I adore you.
follow us.
I adore you.
Follow us and subscribe, right? That's what we're supposed to say, right?
Oh yeah, follow,
Yeah,
subscribe,
because
all that stuff.
yeah.
And if you
Come
want
see
to
us again.
hear two women talk about stuff, okay?
We're the Seinfeld of the podcast community. Well, we're going to sign off today. Hope that we see you again. It's been a pleasure. So long.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us on MT Fridays. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to like, subscribe, and share for more insightful discussions every Friday. Remember, the brain drain stops here, so keep the conversation going by connecting with us on social media or visiting our website. Until next time, stay curious and keep filling your mind with knowledge. See you next week, Friday, on MT Fridays.